talked yesterday and we got off the phone and I was thinking, I know you were making the drive from Troy to Raleigh to go visit your daughter. I don't know how long that is. I looked it up on a map and it seems like it's a good stretch of highway. What's the soundtrack that you're listening to on that drive?
Yeah, good question. Um, my kids who are young adults now, they're approaching 30. Um, they don't know how I do it. I did not have one song on the phone yesterday. I didn't.
What?
There wasn't. It was a 10.5 hour drive.
Straight shot.
Yeah, and there wasn't one playlist, wasn't one book, no podcast. It was texting with CarPlay, voice to text, and phone calls. And I actually unplugged my phone, or turned everything off the last half hour just to have a breather before I came in to see my daughter.
Wow. Wow. I've been following along on social media. You had some incredibly uh, classy and gracious posts, and it was fun going through the comments. Uh, Really clear that you've had an impact on a lot of people, a positive impact on a lot of people. What have you learned about your personal network and community in the last 48 hours?
Well, there's a bunch of different categories, and one is the overwhelming support that's there. That you always don't know if it's there or not, right? You have these thinking partners. Many of them are private. Um, one week it might be this friend, and next week it might be the next friend. But when something happens like this, like you get fired from a job that you love and that people associate you with, and people come out of the woodwork, and they've been extremely supportive. Um, some people just say, "Hey, I'm thinking of you," and some people give quotes. Some people give great words of advice, and it's amazing how many of them really hit home at the right time. And that's what I did in the car. I just tried to personally respond um, to everyone because they've meant a lot for me and my two daughters and my wife Susan and I.
I was thinking about this too. We've been doing this long enough, and coaching hockey isn't always the best vocation for families. Um, but it's really clear that your family has been, woven into the DNA of this whole journey that you've been on. Um, and when you reflect back, or if you were giving perhaps advice to younger coaches, where does family fit into that sort of priority as we're all chasing, wins and losses in that next game?
Yeah, it's really interesting because right now, I'm not the only one going through a tough time. Chuck Weber, who's a lifetime and career coach and a heck of a great guy, he was let go hours after me. But he didn't get into the press release. Nothing was mentioned of Chuck, and I think that's hard for him because he has a different platform to get it out. Mine's the head of the press release, but so my conversations with Chuck, Matthias Lang, Carlos Zernis, Liam Thrall, our coaches are, hey, protect yourself, protect your family, and that's exactly and immediately where my mind goes. And I've got a tremendously supportive wife, Susan, who's also a professor. She teaches at RPI, and
Wow.
that's a challenge for her to walk into an environment, and she's created her own success and highly intelligent. And people just look at her and say, "Well, you're leaving now too." Well, she has a career. She's somebody, and she's
Yeah.
impacting as many lives and maybe more because she teaches 3-4 classes a semester. So family is everything. Without it, um, you could be a nomad and go around. So we've had these conversations with our immediate family, two daughters and a wife who higher education has been our life. but it extends to her family. Her dad played in the NHL for 11 years. They moved around. He got, he got dealt some tough situations, and their family got through it. So um, right now it's really the only thing that we've focused on, which was spend time with family, listen to family, focus on family, and the rest will all take care of itself.
I think that just that is so well said, David. I think just that, like, just personally, like, lands with me, that I think no matter what we choose to do with our life, there's always a roller coaster. It's always a work in progress, but just I think a great reminder that having people around you that ground you, your family, is that matters more than anything. To celebrate the highs and to be there, when things aren't so high. Given the level that you were coaching, unlike I think a lot of the coaches that we have on the program, where they might be introduced to a player because they get traded to their team, or they might be at a level where perhaps it's a bit more transactional. Not the case in your situation in college, where you develop a personal relationship not just with players but their families before they ever pull on an RPI uniform. What do you say to the players?
Well, I wanted it to be really a race for them to hear from me, and it was a very simple message, and it was, "Hey, I'm no longer the coach of the program, but I believe in you, the athlete and the person, and I'm here to help you as the days move on. I look forward to connecting as soon as we can." It was a very simple message that went to our committed players, to the recruits, but also the same message to our current players, the team of which we're trying to help some guys play pro hockey. We're trying to help some guys just take the next step in their career, and we're trying to help some guys transition into college. And I've had conversations with not everybody yet, but almost everybody.
We've all heard the adage that coaches are hired to be fired. I think that anybody that gets into this line of work understands that. I think it's really challenging for people that aren't inside the game to maybe wrap their head around that, because I think it's so unique and unusual. But at times like this, we're reminded the volatility that's involved in coaching. But I wonder, what's the reminder? What's great about coaching?
Oh, well, yesterday ended with last night. That's what's
Yeah,
great about coaching, is that we get a
yeah,
chance today. And I was listening to a recent one you did with Josh Holden, and he's talking about 1% better. Like where do we need to improve today? And when adversity strikes, we teach our players. We try to teach our players, don't get too high, because adversity can be good as well. Like a
yeah.
huge victory. Let's not get too high. Let's not get too low. But let's let's focus on the here and now. And with what's great about coaching is there's people to do it with. It's not in an office by ourselves. There's people that want to help you accomplish your goals. There's people that want to hold you back. There's people that don't want to help you, right? Whether it be an opponent or an adversary. But um, coaching is trying to get a group together to accomplish something special. And when you get fired, when something happens, the group is the family, which we talked about earlier. And then it starts in the center and it quickly branches out. It branches out from family to close friends to coaching, mentors and colleagues, and that's what the game is. The game is everybody trying to accomplish something special. I think we measure it a lot in trophies, um, and championships and wins and losses, but the ability to learn and grow, I think, is where every coach has an opportunity to make an impact on people.
Speaking of that impact, what coach had an impact on you?
Um, a lot, a lot. The like Rick
Yeah,
Gotkin, who's a legend. He's so positive. I've often joked he tells me he loves me more than my wife does, and I know my wife loves me. Um, as a coach, Trevor Large, Scott Mosier, Chuck Weber, those guys were my assistants, and you learn from those guys. But um, I was fortunate as a player. I played for Kurt Fraser. I played for Al Sims. We won a championship in Fort Wayne. I played for Rick Dudley and Steve Ludzik and Bruce Boudreau and some of the classic hockey names. And I mean, I can remember sitting on the bus in Binghamton with Jim Hiller, who's now head coach in LA. And, we didn't really know each other. And we were sitting beside, not right beside each other, but in seats across from each other, and started talking about coaches and maybe what we want to do. And we both realized that we had been keeping journals of all our
No
coaches
way.
all through college, and now through our early years of pro. And there isn't one guy that I didn't have a lot of notes and details and drills and conversations. I mean, Jerry Welsh coached me for 4 years at Ohio State. Um, just a tremendous man who his message to me, like he had a tough ending to his career at Ohio State, and he put it all in perspective. And so those names come very quickly and very rapidly to me, and every one of them has had an impact on me.
Wow. Do you still have those journals?
I do.
Oh my god. Oh my god. When you're having a conversation with, in that case with Jim, and did the prospect that both of you might become coaches, was that a part of, that dialogue on the bus?
It wasn't. It wasn't. It was really, oh, that's cool. What did you like about this coach? And Jim at that time had played for Scotty Bowman, had played for Rick Comley at Northern Michigan, had won a national championship, and we really just were talking about things that we liked, and thought that maybe things would work and didn't work. But I think it was evident that maybe both of us had an eye on coaching at some point.
When you look back on the things that you would have identified that you like from a coach, if players today, or the players that you coach today, if they were to keep a journal and keep track of the things that they like, do you think that has that changed a lot?
Uh, we've done a lot with personalities, Aaron. Just the assessment and the communication styles, I guess, is a better term. Um, and I know that every coach has a different personality, a different style, and my style, um, hasn't been for everybody. And not everybody is sending me, support messages, and that goes with coaching. But what I learned is, in all of these different styles, you got to be yourself. And my the best version of myself is direct and honest, and that works with, I believe, how it worked with me, and I believe it works with most of the athletes, not all of them, but most of the athletes that I've had success with. And that's what I always wanted, but it's not necessarily everybody's style.
One of the things that we've had a lot of coaches that have gone through this that have mentioned in hindsight is that for the first time in a long time, they get to watch a hockey game as a fan, or they're not sitting there inputting events on whatever editing system they look like. They can sit on a couch and watch a hockey game as a fan, and that through that process they start to see things that maybe were right in front of their face, but they didn't see when they were looking at it through the lens of a coach. Would there be anything that that's coming to mind to say, hey, like, I kind of want to look for this, or I want to watch this level of hockey, or I'm really curious to see how teams are playing in this situation?
Well, that appetite, Aaron, has always been very strong. I love watching all levels of hockey. Um, I've spent, you know, 28 years coaching college, but 28 years watching NHL, American League, East Coast League. Some of the best viewing is watching other sports, watching. I mentioned my two daughters. One of them played college softball, and we had the opportunity to coach that. But I also viewed. I just watched the competitiveness and watched the IQ. Our other daughter played college hockey, and I would watch those as a fan and pick up on those things. So that appetite is still very very strong. Um, I'm still watching, an NHL game, maybe not last night, but or the night before, but very often. And hey, what are they doing here? What are the elite players in the world doing, and how can I incorporate that into what we're trying to do? So that appetite for learning is really strong still, and um, I feel that with the experience, you can watch the game and just enjoy it, and also um, try and learn and grow from what's happening in the moment.
You retired as a player. You jumped right into the arena. You spent, I believe, 6 seasons as an assistant coach at Miami, Bowling Green, and then Mercyhurst before accepting the head coaching job at Canisius. In those formative years when you were cutting your teeth, what were some of the lessons that you learned on the job that have really stuck with you?
I remember leaving the office one day at Miami of Ohio. Mark Mazzolini called me back. He had to walk out of my office, by his office, and then I was going on the road recruiting. Um, and I poked my head in. Hey, coach, I'm on the road. I'll see you in a week. All right, have a great trip. Be safe. Get out. Call Smitty. Come on back. He calls me back. He goes, you know, it's recruiting. You got to be a bulldog. You got to be a bulldog. You got to get after. You got to stay on them. Don't take no for an answer. All right, coach, I got it. Walk out again. Calls me right back. Smitty, got to be a bulldog. You got to stay on it. And there's no breaks. There's no nobody's gonna. If you get a recruit, great, get on to the next. If you lose a recruit, great, get on to the next. But you really have to be tenacious, and that exit that day going on a recruiting trip with Coach Mazzolini has stuck with me a long time, and I've tried to emulate that or try to repeat that performance with some of the assistants later. Just mentioning like, hey, stay on your game, keep on it, be a bulldog.
Well, so not today, but that's approximately 25 years ago. The landscape of college hockey, to say it's evolved or changed would be an understatement.
Yes.
If you had to be a bulldog in 1999, what animal do you have to be to survive in college hockey today? You just even when anything when it just comes to recruitment and putting your team together.
I think you got to be. I mean, you need the vision. You need the vision of
Yeah,
an eagle, right? You need the
yeah,
talons of an eagle. So it's probably a golden eagle or a bald eagle because you need talons to get a recruit, and then you got to hang on to that recruit. You got to have the vision to look and see where the next predator is coming from because it's vicious. Recruiting is vicious, and
yeah,
commitments are only as good as the people that make them. And there's a lot of people that try
yeah.
to try to knock on the door to break those commitments.
There's been so much, I think, gosh, especially in the past 24 months. And I think that, largely we hear maybe the negative aspects, whether it's, just the portal. I mean, I talk to coaches all the time. Obviously, you do, and you've lived it, that, this has become a 24/7, 365 day a year gig. Um, the one part that maybe doesn't get talked about as much is what it's done for players, and it's really provided a lot of different options. And I'd be curious to know, from purely a development standpoint, coming from a place where players had to make, at least elite players especially, a really big decision at a young age, generally between, say, going to major, junior, or choosing the college route. Have we are players more or less set up for success now, given the current climate?
Yeah, and I don't know that I have an answer that is going to validate all of these decisions. because
Yeah.
I think it's both. I think we've better equipped young men and women with the ability to transfer and change schools. We've given them the chance to choose their own path, or at least listen to somebody that is choosing a path for them. And I think there's benefits in that. I think it can be healthy. It can, um, raise their own personal awareness. I think the downside of that is we've maybe lost some resiliency and grit um, in, hey, this is a decision I made and I'm going to make it work. It's going to work no matter what. And that balance, I don't think will ever be equitable because um, it takes a special person to know when to leave and when to stay. And I think what we're seeing is young people with the influence of coaches, advisors, agents. Young people are the ones that are supposed to be at the forefront and learning from these decisions, but they're often caught in the middle and not knowing what's right. So I think eventually they will learn from their experiences, which we all do. And I'm learning from this one. You learn from the good, the same as you can learn from the bad, and in some of these bad moments where, you lose a game or you go in the transfer portal and you don't get a home are defining moments for a team or defining moments for a season, and you don't get that if you don't have that adversity. You don't get that without some tough situations and some real awakenings. So I believe that the athletes are elite today. I think they can continue to get better, but the decision making process has taken them to an area that is still um, in between a rock and a hard place at times.
Sure. Well, and I think your answer kind of maybe speaks to where I was going because, I look at you spent 12 seasons at Canisius and in a place where, um, there hadn't been, a track record of success before you got there. I mean, you built that program into one that, made its way to the tournament, produced, a lot of professional players, and I think really punched above its weight class. From an outsider's perspective, I look at your success there and think, gosh, like how much of that is rooted in you having the ability to recruit players that did align really well with your leadership style and your culture,
Yeah.
but also players that probably could look around the room and say, hey, we're going to do this together and nobody's going anywhere. And there's maybe, call it a brotherhood, but I think at the end of the day, they don't make Disney movies about, people going their own way. They make Disney movies about people coming together and achieving something that's greater than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, and Canisius was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Not easy, especially at the
I bet.
beginning.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning when I had close friends and mentors say, "Dave, do not take that job. Um, it's 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 not a job you want to take." Um, I took it, and there was no athletic director. Now, since then, the athletic director, Bill Maher, has been there since 2 months after I first took that job 20 years ago, and he's done a great job with that program. And but what happened there was in the early days when we're and this is a Red Berenson, a former teammate of my father-in-law's in St. Louis, when I got the Canisius job, and he said, Dave, the early days of Michigan um, were similar to the early days of Canisius. Now, I think we could argue that, maybe they were different, but the story
Yeah.
is Red felt he was alone at the beginning, and he was walking through a marsh, and
Yeah.
he had to get out of his canoe, and Red likes to canoe, and he had to get out of his canoe, and he was, you know, trudging through this marching through this swamp, and he's like, there's bugs, there's leeches, and there's all these bad things. But then he got somebody in the boat. He got the right guy in the boat. And then he got another guy in the boat. And pretty soon they were all in the boat and they were all traveling through the swamp. And then pretty soon they were on a speedboat. And he shared, and somebody else shared that story with me recently. And so when we went to Canisius, that was my effort. And what we got at Canisius was um, a group of people in administration and the support staff that believed we could make a difference. including the Buffalo Sabres, who believed in our program just a little bit, and we're great partners in the Western New York community. And then all of a sudden, we got a tipping point that the players saw a commitment, and the players saw what we were working towards, and we ultimately built that program into something special. Um, Very similar to when I took the RPI job. A lot of people said, "Dave, that's a really hard job." And the high end academics and the tremendous history
Yeah.
of players and success there. But I've been a builder, and we've built cultures, and we've taken it from the ground up. The biggest difference of getting everybody on the bus, like you're referring to, and getting all these guys pulling the same direction is COVID in combination with the portal, in combination with everything, took a whack at us at RPI, and we weren't able to get that same momentum done that we were at Canisius. But being a builder is exactly what you said: getting everybody pulling that boat in the same direction through good and hard times.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned momentum because, you go back and look, your first 3 years at RPI, you built considerable momentum. And I think it, it goes to show that winning is, it's the combination of a lot of things coming together, um, at the right time. I'm really curious because you mentioned, going to Canisius and going to RPI. There's the support staff, all the people around you that had an influence in building that momentum and ultimately the success at Canisius. But I look at the landscape today. If you go on YouTube, you're going to see these videos of, every college team's out there trying to put these videos or tours of their locker room and showing, their players lounge. And, we've got an Xbox in our player lounge. And it's like, no, we got 3 Xboxes in our player lounge, and we've got all these bells and whistles. But, if your phone rang right now and it was a young coach saying, hey, I'm looking at making a move and here's my options, what would you advise them in terms of weighing, the people they're going to be around versus the infrastructure, let's call it, that they might be surrounded by?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a tricky question in terms of, um, you know, I don't want to paint a picture on RPI or Canisius or any one program, but what it infrastructure in a building um, is not something that's going to learn and grow with you. A
Yeah.
building, while it may have challenges, will not challenge you. And so the tangible growth area is 100% with the people. Getting people that can see the same vision as you, or you can see the same vision as them, and sharing a philosophy, and just like marriage. Again, I got a great wife, and we have our good days and we have our bad days, but we have a lot of shared values. We have a lot of shared interests, and most importantly, shared experiences trying to get us somewhere to accomplish great things. And so every coach should go with people that have um, alignment in the key areas of their life and key areas of a program or a team.
Totally. Totally. What aspects of the game, in the short term, are you going to miss teaching?
I love the details. I love the details of whether it be just killing the spin on a puck on the wall, right?
Yeah.
How you do that, and you watch Kucherov do it, and then you try and teach our guys, and then also listening and learning from them, where they watch guys that'll put the reverse spin on a pass, and I'm like, geez, I never thought of that when I was playing, and you start experimenting with them. So it's really in those interactions where people are trying to grow. We recently had um, our senior banquet, our senior graduating players banquet, and my message to them was keep getting better, and every day starts the same. And that to me is what I'm going to miss. How can we get better today? As
Yeah.
a team, as an individual, in a little area, in a big area. And to me, that's what I'll miss the most.
I think it's so interesting. You use that example of like the spin on a puck. I mean, you were clearly a gifted offensive player in your day. How much has the offensive part of the game evolved since finished playing and to throughout your coaching career?
I want to make sure we record that. And when those people call me, my friends call and say gifted offensive player, um,
It's out there now. It's
it's
proven.
out there now.
Yeah.
Um, the game, I think the game really changed. And I don't know if Steve Valiquette can get all the credit for this, but um, with the term the Royal Road, I believe the game changed the most then. That to me was the single greatest thing, that a pass across the ice. Well, in my era, we knew that pass off pad was there, but that's the same thing as getting that puck across the Royal Road. And now you had, at the same time the Royal Road concept was happening, guys are bigger, faster, and stronger, and the evolution of the sticks was coming in. So now
Mm,
a Royal
great
Road
call. Yeah.
pass, a Royal Road pass from the top of the circle is a one timer. It's in the back of the net already. And I think we've seen something like, we saw 10 or 12 years of NHL goalies with rising save percentage. And now I think we've seen 5 or 6 or 7 years of declining save percentage. And I think the goalies are just as good, but the scoring and how guys are scoring now is where it's really changed. But the Royal Road and spreading out the offense and being able to score from distance because of the evolution of sticks, to me, is the biggest change from my era.
How much? I mean, you would have had a front row seat. You just talk about the skill sets of players. In it goes without saying that the experience of being an aspiring player today and what you would get exposed to, specifically the coaches you might get exposed to at a young age, is no disrespect to the coaches that you and I grew up with, but it's just different. I mean, kids are certainly on the ice a lot more. They're specialty coaches, etc. Um, what areas do you think that have had a positive effect on the game from just a skill perspective, and what players can do today?
I'm going to start with a story from my youth, and I think it still applies today. So I grew up in a little town, Arthur, Ontario, north of Guelph, 3 hours from Toronto, and my mom made a rink for us in the backyard
Your
every.
mom made it.
My mom, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, and she did it all the time, but it was a small rink, and on that rink again, we did everything that kids do, but we didn't call it practice. So now I fast forward to my pro career, and where was I best? Really small spaces. I was good around the net because on a 30 foot rink, 30 by 12 rink, um, it's two nets and a little bit of ice, not much else. So I was really good around the net, really good pulling pucks off the wall, really good in traffic. I think the same thing applies now. Whatever you practice a lot, you will get better at. But one of the hardest parts of coaching now is that they all see the dot to dot one timer, and it does look easy on TV. They all see the skills competition, and the players all want to be that player. And, you know, if Tom Wilson was to ever be a free agent now, everybody wants him because he does
Great
things
call.
that not everybody else does. So while the skills of Pat Kane and Connor Bedard and Connor McDavid are elite and important to the success of a team, so is what Zach Hyman does. So
Yeah.
is what all those other skills are. So is there one that's changed the game? I still think it's skating and passing, and from there everything else can evolve. But without compete and IQ, it's you're just a flash in the pan. So um, to me, it's still the fundamentals, the big part for sure.
So, as a coach, and especially for young coaches or coaches that are coaching young players, My, I like to think of the coaches site. We do, we offer a good service for coaches as a resource to learn and gain more knowledge, and that's important. I'm also concerned at times that we arm coaches with so much information that for a coach that's maybe on the ice twice a week with their team, they feel like they've got to fit it all in. And that's maybe not the best learning environment either. Do you have any sort of insights, I guess, on or recommendations for coaches to say, over the course of a season, what that appropriate, how to allocate their focus or at least the focus of their players so that they do invest the required time to get better at a specific skill?
Yeah, and I love this topic because as coaches, we often fall in love with practice and we fall in love with new ideas. I think feedback from your leadership group is critical. And if it's 14 you, there's still leaders, there's still voices in the locker room. Um, and I love what Steve Kerr does with the Warriors. Um, he lets players run practice. He lets players design drills. And again, it would have been 1996 with Kurt Fraser. He would occasionally put up on the board and say, "All right, you guys, you come up with a 2-on-1 drill, and you run it." And somebody else would come up with a 1-on-1 drill. So he was still getting what he wanted accomplished, but he was letting the players take ownership in it. And so, as a coach, it's our responsibility to, as a staff, have the pulse of the players. And the best, most effective way to do that is to talk to and listen to the players. And while they do like change, if that forum is positive and they don't like a drill, you need to move on. You need to get rid of it. You need to engage their speed and their heart in whatever drills we're doing. And change means slow, right? Simple means
Yeah.
fast. Simple,
Yeah.
so keep with what works and listen to your players. To me, that's the biggest advantage that we have as coaches.
Oh man, it's so funny. I'll text it to you if you haven't seen it before. But like literally this morning, I'm making my son's lunch, and this clip comes on Twitter, and it's of Steve Kerr in an interview, and he's talking about because he was in the media before, and so he decided like he was thinking he might want to get into coaching, and he went and spent some time with Pete Carroll, and Pete invites him into the Seahawks, gets to sit in all the meetings, etc. And one day they're kind of leaving the office, and he says like, how are you going to coach? And he's like, Steve's like, oh, like what kind of system are we going to run? He's like, no, like how are you going to make the players feel when they come in the building? And he goes on to tell the story how Pete shared with him when he got fired. I think it was from the Jets and the Patriots. He goes, before he goes to USC, he spends some time with the San Francisco 49ers, and he would spend time with Bill Walsh, who was still hanging around the facility, and would explain to him that your values can't be things on the wall. They have to exist. Your job as a coach is to bring them to life. But the example he uses is saying, like, he goes, I really believe in joy. He's like, if I say I believe in joy and my players don't have it fun at practice, then I'm a hypocrite. And I'm paraphrasing there, but I just think that's so timely. And again, you talk about simple as fast, and I think, but what you just described is accessible to um, you know every coach. I mean, heck, we use it with our my little guy. I mean, you can tell really quick what drills the 6-year-olds get up for, and it makes sense to just keep leaning into those. Um, when you look ahead at all the coaches listening to this are getting into big games. And I think when you talk about simple as fast, I think that is really amplified in big games come playoff time. What have you learned about, what parts of the game to focus on or to keep simple when the stakes are high?
Yeah, I think I love that playoff sort of mentality in the question, and it's be great at who you are is the most important thing, and that what we do as coaches um, is we analyze the other team. We know every breakout. when the right defenseman is here, this is the breakout they're going to do. And um, what we need to do is break that down into 3 or 4 bite-sized pieces and say, here's the trends of the other team. This is what we do. And as the biggest games come up, again, and there's lots of ways to say it, but you know, they're going to write the headline. The headline is going to say, "We won this game because what we did well." And we may have stopped them on the way, but the first line isn't, "Hey, we stopped them from being great." It's we had to do something to win the game. So let's go be us.
When, you talk about adversity, and, I think that it's pretty rare that we see examples of teams that go through a season without bumps in the road. Um, how have you found, or what ways have you found to be effective in terms of, when adversity strikes and you have to rebound quickly, and get ready for the next puck to drop? Um, how have you learned to lead teams through that and put them in the right mindset for that next opportunity?
Yeah, adversity has the ability to strengthen your focus. Um, and adversity comes as individuals, it comes as a team, but um, success and failure, they're attached at the hip. They really are. And we hear the media people talk about you need to lose first before you can win.
Yeah, so
They
true.
weren't ready to win. Well, by losing game 7 last year, Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final, that left a hole in their heart that if properly channeled into emotion and reminded about what they're playing for, that Stanley Cup is the greatest trophy in sports. That will be a greater motivation than anything else they can provide. And what did you feel you lost in that game 7? You lost a memory of a lifetime. You lost, you didn't just lose game 7, you lost something that you had dreamed about as a child. You lost that single day with the cup where everybody in your world can come and put cornflakes in it or have their baby sit in it. Like those shared experiences, that's what they lost, and that can drive you forward, um, into a place that you never knew that you could get to. The complacent winner is waiting to get beat, and the hungry loser will take that trophy from them. So as a coach, we need to remind our teams once in a while of hardships. We need to remind them how far we have come. We need to remind them what we've learned and how we grew in what areas that separate us from the team that got hurt so badly. And we've been able to do that, and all of a sudden that mentioned momentum again. When that wave gets going, that team is unstoppable. That team is
Yeah.
unstoppable because they want to fill that hole in their heart. And as a team, that's a big hole collectively, and an organization, and everybody, they saw it. They knew the cup was in the building, and we're going to get back there. And some teams never do. Some teams never do. But those that do, I just love the hunger of the players on those teams that say, you know what, I'm going to win again. I'm hungry the second time. I've eaten, I'm going to eat again. And to me, those are the special leaders that you give all the salary cap to. Give as much as you can. Those guys that are hungry after eating already.
Well said, man. As you say that, I can't help but think that you could draw a lot of parallels with coaches that have maybe faced some adversity in their career, and then it would appear they come back hungrier. And I mean, you just look at recent Stanley Cup winners of coaches that have, they're with different teams, they get different opportunities, and I think it speaks to, just that, that mindset that is that's required, and that I think really proves that you know coaches get better, from these setbacks, just like teams and players do. Um, how are you going to be stronger or better as a coach the next opportunity you get?
Well, I think um, and just to pull on one little thread that you just mentioned, and we look for
Yeah.
this in the best players in the world, um, and the best coaches, right, across all sports. There's a word called passion, and without it, you cannot achieve nearly as much. So I believe, now to tie it into your question, I believe that the coaches that succeed, that through adversity, they have a passion, whether it's to prove people wrong or to prove themselves right, or just to accomplish a task. There's a passion and a drive and a desire to accomplish something. And I know that's the passion I feel, and it gets tested. And so, how will I be better? I mean, I know that I'm very intentional and reflecting all the time. Um, but I'll reflect on what went well. It's a standard after action review that we do with games. What did we do well? What did we need to do better? And let's apply it to the game plan moving forward. So we did a lot of things really well at RPI, at Canisius, and my different stops. But there's a lot of things that we can do better, and I think every coach and every team can say that. But I will go through the same process that I would do at the end of every year, in anticipation of another opportunity.
Do you still keep a journal?
Yes.
People that listen to this show have heard me say this so much. It is, two things that I would say are the threads that connect our guests the most are so many of them started out in the minor leagues in their coaching journey and would sort of point to the fact that they had to drive the Zamboni, cook the hot dogs, take the tickets. The second thing is that early on, before anybody told them to do it, they started keeping a journal and they took notes. And it just blows my mind. Like it's such, again, such, it's not on one of these things, smartphones. It's pen on paper, and there just seems to be that exercise appears to be really powerful.
There was an evolution for me from I struggled to just keep a journal, but where I found my way was I love to do lists, things I want to accomplish today or this week or this month.
Yeah,
Um, and then what I do is I go back every week and I reflect on those and make notes on my to do list. Did I get this done on time?
no worries.
What
Love that.
happened during this time period? Um, and is there any unfinished business? And that allowed me to reflect on exactly what my day to day was. And then again, ask those questions: what are we doing well? What can we do better? What's the game plan moving forward? I had sort of already done it. And how I stumbled on that, I wasn't a great student at Ohio State my first semester. I wasn't going to class. I wasn't doing anything. And I can't remember who it was. Probably a lady by the name of Kate Riffey, who was the academic advisor there, a legend at Ohio State. Um, she said, just go to class and take notes. And then after class, just read over your notes. And then at night, read over your notes, because then you've learned it 3 times that day. And once I started doing that, I was retaining so much more information. And now, as a coach and a leader, right, I do my to do list. That's once. I check it off. I make some notes. That's twice. I review it at the end of the week. That's 3 times. Now, at different times of the year, I'll review that journal again, and it sinks in. So my recall and retention, and the ability to pull out certain thoughts and necessary items is so much better. So it's a little trick I learned, from an academic advisor at Ohio State in 1987.
I think that is so valuable, and I would be curious, today, just knowing, again, we talked on kind of that 24/7, 365 cadence of being an NCAA coach. How did you create the discipline or the space to go back and say, hey, like for this period of the day, I don't know if that takes you 5 minutes or an hour, but I'm going to create this space. I'm going to prioritize this over, I'm sure, the amount of text messages or just the different directions you would have been pulled in.
Again, I think it came naturally to me, trying to stay one or two steps ahead of the calendar, right? So the calendar for me it has been a great um, motivational tool that if I get to a Monday morning and I don't know what I'm doing that day or that week, I'm not being the leader that I need to be. So we know what our schedule is in advance. We plan it out a year in advance, pretty much every practice, the time slot. So that sequence of events is very rhythmic, right? So you plan out the full season, you plan out the full week, you plan out the full day, you plan out the full hour. Makes it a lot easier to exercise in the morning and take a lunch break.
I want to ask you about practice planning, but I'd be curious, how did you start your days? Or
Our
how do you
on
start
ice
your days?
practices.
No, just personally, you get up in the morning. What happens next? What's the first
Yeah,
60 minutes?
usually I like to go for a run, although the pickleball has been picking up a lot of steam.
Oh man, how is it ever? Yeah.
Yeah, so pickleball seems to be a nighttime event, which takes away from the morning run. But I'm an early riser. I like to get up. I like to have a cup of coffee and look at my things to do and get into the rink and really just start the day. Say good morning to anybody that's there and start on the task for the day. But most of those things have been completed the night before because I want to get to the day and accomplish things, not plan things. So the start of a day is just checking things off. Hey, we've got practice plan printed, we've got it posted. I've got this meeting with this guy at this time. I've got these phone calls here. So all of that is done either the day before or the week before.
When it comes to practice planning, and you mentioned that you plan a year in advance, what have you learned about perhaps how you structure the season?
Yeah.
Or maybe a better way to ask that is like, what do you do different now than maybe 10 years ago, and that you found has been a better way to lay out your seasonal plan?
There's still an element when our guys show up in college that they come from, you know, advanced functions class, that their brain takes a minute to switch from math to hockey. And on the days that they don't have school, it's a different practice regimen where they get in, they get a warm up, they get a rollout, and they're ready for the first drill. Um, at times, and we would have guys go to class till 10 to 2, and practice would start at 2:20. So they got to hustle, hustle, hustle. On those days, we need to make sure that we're prepared for an extra drill. Might be a warm up drill, might be a little bit of free time. And I think the difference over the generations or the 28 years that I've been coaching is is the awareness of the coaches, the awareness that there's other factors, whether it be shown off on how they sleep and the aura ring or the whoop straps. All that information now, I believe, is being used much better for a state of readiness for the players. And are they ready for practice at 2:20, or do they need a 5 minute meditation or 5 minutes solitary playtime? So I think the awareness is the biggest things that have changed.
You know what? That's just as you say that, it's so interesting. So, when I coached at UBC, um, really good academic school, and when I was there, we had our first player that got into engineering and played hockey, and it was a big deal because the engineering program was so rigorous and didn't leave any room or I guess flexibility to accommodate a hockey schedule. There was a concern from for the player to say, hey, are you going to be are you going to be set up for success
Right.
and be able to balance both? At the same time, from a team perspective, you're like, okay, are we going to get the most out of this player? And also, you definitely don't want too many players. You don't want this to catch on, because then it's going to be really tough to win. And then I look at RPI, where I'm assuming that basket weaving isn't on the course selection list. But you say something really interesting about the switch in the player's brain, which that means one thing to you, but I think it also means something to the coach that's getting kids coming in on a from from school, and they got to get them engaged.
So I really think that as we know our athletes, each of them has a different switch. And that
Yeah.
engineering student or that biology student, that might be easy for them and that might be low stress. But when they get to practice, they're just not ready for that. So everybody has um, a different hot button, and some guys just handle certain classes, but they're all focused on something, and it just about their potential is met when they can just freely perform and eliminate distractions. And whether chemistry or biology or engineering is a distraction, that's for somebody else to decide. But for some people, having a family situation is a distraction. And the hockey rink should be a free space for them to learn and grow and love and find joy in the game. And whether it's engineering, a family situation, a lack of sleep, or a snowstorm, we don't know. So trying that's our job as coaches, is trying to get all these guys in the right space so that we can perform as a team. And the beginning of practice, whether it's a wrong-handed scrimmage or an intense physical drill,
Yeah.
that balance is important to get the team mindset into one place where we can learn and grow.
Love that. You mentioned your wife, Susan. She's a
Yep.
professor. You've spent, the better part of your career surrounded by folks in academia. What influence have they had in how you teach?
um, so my wife Susan is a philosophy professor.
Oh,
Um,
my perfect.
yes, uh, she has the ability as a daughter of a hockey player and the husband of a hockey player, hockey coach, to speak to our level and speak at a much higher intellectual level about ethics. And she does philosophy of race, she does bioethics. So her ability to connect with people is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, as a mentor, we have two daughters. One's an occupational therapist, has a master's degree. She lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our other daughter is just starting as an assistant professor with her PhD in applied behavior analysis. And and so she is starting a career in behavioral management. And this started back, and you and I spoke about, the TCS one, maybe 2017, and she was in attendance, and she's lectured and now gone on and had mentors of her own, and now she's embarking on a business, and her and I are in the early stages of trying to help others with behavior and change management, whether it be coaches or players or culture organizations. And all of us together as a family, Susan, Ellis, Kylie, myself, these have been conversations our whole life. How just professional conversations about how do we be the best version of ourselves.
I think we should host a coaching clinic at the Smith family, like Thanksgiving dinner next year, and just let people like sit in and be an audience.
Well, my wife did win Coach of the Year in Erie, Pennsylvania youth hockey one year, and
No way.
often reminds me of that. She's got a great way about her, and there's a lot going on in the Smith dining room table at Thanksgiving and every night.
You mentioned the word mentors. I know folks in the coaching community that look up to you as a mentor. Um, and you've referenced some folks that clearly played that role for you in your career. How important is that in this thing called coaching?
Ooh, it's underneath the umbrella of people, and when
Yeah.
you have someone that believes in you, that you trust, you can really learn a lot and grow. But you can't assign a mentor. It needs to be organic and naturally formed, where if it happens, that trust is mutual, and I care for you, you care for me. But it allows me to say to you, Aaron, I think you can be better in this area. and you don't get offended. You take it and say, man, this guy really cares about me. And, there's a lot of, we've had discussion over the years that, we shouldn't be called coaches because that's very much directing. We should be called mentors because when we're at our best, we're supportive, we're loyal, and we're connected, and we're really a mentor. That's when we're at our best. And it's hard when there's 28 guys or 22 guys. But I think when the position of head coach is a mentor to all 28 at the same time, plus a staff, plus a support staff, those are championship teams. And that's what we all strive to accomplish.
A lot of coaches are heading into the off season or getting prepared to head into the off season. How did you aspire to improve, or how would you try and leverage this time to go into next season 1% better?
Well, under the current circumstances, I've got a lot more time,
Yeah,
and part of the networking for me, because I want to stay in the business and feel I can add value to any organization,
no
is
doubt.
is just talking to people. Is just
Yeah.
talking to people and asking and learning, not telling them. I don't want to call somebody and tell them what my problems are or what about me. I want to say, hey, what are you working on? And where are the areas that you found success? And against that, the reverse osmosis of that after action review. Like, hey, Aaron, what are you doing well? Aaron, what are you trying to get better at? Aaron, what's your game plan moving forward? And then I might be able to pull, a nugget or two from you and say, man, I like that idea. That's a good book. I'm going to read that book, or I'm going to address that situation a little bit differently right now. So I think it's more just learning through the network and talking to people, maybe that I wouldn't have talked to otherwise, because I was just gearing up for another season in college.
We've had enough of these conversations with coaches that are in the process of looking at what comes next in their career, and sometimes this opens up doors that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to walk through and have those types of conversations. um and I just think, like, personally, recently I was down in Minnesota last week, and just through a friend, Ryan Blank, um we had the opportunity, myself and Tobias Johansson, who's the head coach of Team Norway, to go visit the Vikings facility, and we got to hang out in Quessy, the GM's office, for 40 minutes. And it was funny. The thing that sort of came out of all that was just balancing young kids and leadership, and how do you do that? Like, that's probably where we spend most of our time. And it was just the process of hearing that somebody else is going through that was very reassuring, because I think sometimes it's easy to think you're on an island. If you had a magic wand and you could go be a fly on the wall in any sports organization's you know uh, facility or a coach's office, or perhaps it's outside of sports, where would you want to go spend a bit of time?
Yeah, and I'm not sure where my answer would have been, 3 days ago. But you know, there's been a tough few days here,
Yeah,
and um, I know that there's people that will open up the doors to be that fly in the wall.
yeah,
Um, John Tortorella, Brad Shaw, the Flyers staff. I did that this year.
no way.
I was there for 3 days, and they let me be literally a fly in the wall. And um, the experience I gained from that, and I've done it a few times, and there's some very, gracious people in the NHL that are not restrictive of their information and their time, and so valuable. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that. If I had to pick one, I feel that it would be best suited in a hockey environment with someone that I had already had a relationship with, rather than go the pie in the sky and say, well, I want to, sit down with John Wooden if that were possible. Brad Shaw and I played together, and Daryl Williams is on that staff. So those two guys, I was comfortable enough to ask them questions, and they were comfortable enough. So to me, the fly in the wall needs to be a very comfortable fly in the wall, that can ask questions and listen and learn. Um, and whatever that next opportunity is, we want to provide that opportunity for somebody else to be a fly in the wall.
What did you take away from that experience with the Flyers this year? Because I sense that Brad and John, and Daryl are great examples. You don't have the longevity in their careers that they do without trying to constantly evolve and
Yeah.
learn and get better.
Well, the one takeaway that was awesome, and I talked about it a lot as soon as I left there, was the admiration they have for each other. Meaning, um,
Yeah,
you know, Coach Tortorella would say, "Holy cow, Brad Shaw is one of the smartest guys in the game." And Brad Shaw would say, "Wow, look at what Rocky's doing with the power play. That is great stuff." And Rocky would be like, "Man, Daryl Williams is nailing the pre-scouts and kicking ass on what he's doing." And with the turnover of the days and the pace of the clock at the NHL level, they all respected to the very highest level what each other was doing in their area, and there was um, no wonderment about, well, is that really the best thing to do here? It's like, no, Bradshaw's the best guy for that. And all of them were like, hey, Torts is awesome at this. And so again, I sat in and I was so impressed with their their entire organization, everybody from the president, the GM, the assistant GM. I got to spend time and just talk, and I'm really impressed, top to bottom, with their admiration for each other. Um, even just walking to the coach's box during a game, they're talking
yeah,
about how that guy who ran the elevator attendant, hey, that guy's been here 30 years. He's awesome. He's great at what he does. So that was there was a lot of hockey takeaways, but the people
yeah.
takeaway was the admiration for each other.
You talk about that admiration, and and we've touched on mentorship, but while you've been mentoring a lot of aspiring young players, you've been also been mentoring a lot of assistant coaches and aspiring coaches throughout your career. you know Having the opportunity to catch these coaches in the infancy of their career, would you have any advice perhaps in terms of coaches feeling like they've got to focus on maybe certain things? And I partly ask because we have so much data and we get so much feedback, and you can appreciate that young coaches, they want tactics, they want that secret play that's going
Yeah.
to win the game. um, where would you advise that aspiring coaches focus their attention as they develop their skill set or build up their coaching toolbox?
Yeah, that's an emotional question for me because some of the most touching messages have been from those coaches who were younger, um, and whether I gave them a shot, as an equipment manager, as a analytics guy, um, they recognized that we were in it together, and we let them succeed, we let them fail. But those were the touching messages that I got recently. And the common thread, I think, for all of those guys, and there's some great young men out there, like Graham Beamish came in my office one day at Canisius. He's like, I want to be an NHL scout. I'm like, well, what's your name again? And he said, well, Graham, I'll do anything to help your program. And he's been a scout with the Sabres for a long time now.
No way.
Yeah, and he
That's
came to
so cool.
Buffalo, volunteered at Canisius. But the common thread amongst all of these people was they went after an opportunity, not a job title, not a paycheck, nothing other than, can I get involved? And then when I used to interview them, and again, we were trying to get anybody to help us at that time, and have continued that. I was trying to find what they were passionate about, because when passion and need meet, success is formed. So I had a need for analytics. Graham Beamish said, I'll do it. and now he's transferred that um, into a successful scouting career. And without that passion, if you're working for no money or no title or no glory, it goes away quick. So we've been fortunate over the years to have a lot of bright, intelligent young coaches come in, but front and center was passion for something, and then I just had to marry that passion to a need that our program had.
You mentioned analytics. I'd be curious when first started out as an assistant at Miami, or perhaps when you first got a head coaching opportunity with Canisius. When it comes to the analytics and the data, how has that changed? And is there any, if somebody said, "Hey, you can only have access to one or two bits of information," what has become the most important to you or most telling?
Well, I believe in chances for and against, Corsi for and against, and that tells me who has the puck and who's generating the most important part of the game. So I'll look at those things between periods and after games, after weekends, after months, at different points of the season, just to see where players are trending. And I like to see trends. Are you trending up? Are you trending down? Where were you? 3 weeks ago. So to me, that's the most important piece. But over the years, how it's changed is the absolute speed of the analytics. Right? It used to be 4 hours post game VHS to VHS to VHS, and now you can get these analytics. After their during their shift.
I all I can think about right now is how many of our listeners are Googling what VHS is. I
I
guarantee that
didn't even think of that. Yeah,
there's probably a few that are like, "What is Dave Smith talking about? This VHS?"
yeah, yeah.
That's so true. Dave, you mentioned books and maybe resources that you've turned to yourself gain new insights. Anything or any that have really stood out to you, or maybe that you've revisited throughout your career?
Yeah. The, the most important book isn't a book. The most important is having a private thinking partner, somebody that you can talk to. And, whether that's, in the business world, they might call it an executive coach. We might call it a mentor. And I've been fortunate to have a private thinking partner for the last, 10, 15 years, in addition to our family. And that to me expands my knowledge and my awareness and my everything, to just have somebody that I can bounce ideas off of or listen to their ideas. As far as books go, um, I love the audio books. I love the podcasts. I love what you do. I think it's tremendous for coaches. Um, I think I'm reading one right now called Hidden Potential, and
Oh, Adam Grant.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just started it actually yesterday. Just again, I figured I better put some time into a book. But I would recommend, if there's a lot of people that don't like reading. Find somebody that you can talk to. Find somebody that you can share ideas with. That you can you know share good ideas, bad ideas, crazy ideas, dreams, and it will also hold you accountable. To me, that's the best book you can get. But reading is and audiobooks to me are a big part of what I do.
Can I just? This is more of a personal question, and I love that term, personal thinking partner. Um, I've just started engaging with an executive coach, and partly was because somebody told me, they said never trust a coach who's not willing to be coached. Um, and then that really struck a nerve with me, and it's been really positive and rewarding, but it's also, it's a bit of a dance, right? Like on both sides to get the most out of it. The person that you've seen, has it been kind of in that executive coach, or would it skew more to mentorship? And has it been a formal relationship in the sense that you say, we're going to chat every Tuesday at lunchtime throughout the season, or is it just, hey, when I need something, I'll pick up the phone and call you?
A bit of both. It's every other week
Yeah.
during the season, and whenever we pick up the phone and call. And what I believe it does is it allows you to be a little bit more vulnerable if you
Yeah,
trust that person.
totally.
But it's hard to it can be hard to be open. It can be hard to share because if it's just a person, we may not want to divulge our fears. We may not want
Yeah,
to divulge, what's really
yeah,
inside me, and that person, they're not getting the open book, and they can't help you with blind spots. They can't help you with what your strengths are perceived by others if you're not truly open and honest in that relationship. And I think there's a lot of different executive coaches. This is one that works with our team and has worked. Been with, I think, 10 or 12 years now, and it's been a really good fit for me and many others. But um, the ability to open and let people see inside can be challenging. And when you get a private thinking partner that you like, hold on to them.
I want to thank you for coming on today because I think that the one thing that we've learned in sort of this coaches site journey is that there's an immense power to be harnessed just by people sharing their stories and people being able to relate or feel that hey, my power play is struggling too, or I've got an owner that I'm struggling to manage up, or any host of the challenges that coaches face. And and I for you to come on the same week that you were let go from a job that I know how passionate and how invested you were in that is really admirable, and we really appreciate it. And I think part of that is because, listen, the reality is that in the next 6 weeks there's going to be a lot of coaches and a lot of people listening to this that are going to get similar news, and it's going to be a really tough pill to swallow, no doubt. um, a- any advice as you've gone through this process for the first time in terms of maybe offering mentorship to other coaches and on how to um, you know deal with this type of circumstance, and quickly get in a mindset that it sounds like you're in of looking forward and looking for that next opportunity to make an impact with other people.
Yeah, and it stings. It really stings, and it's very hard and uncomfortable. Um, I think the instinct is I want to be alone. I
Yeah,
just leave me alone. Don't talk to me. But I think you have to um, first start in the inner circle. Make sure your family is connected,
yeah,
and then follow your passion. Right, follow your passion. And if maybe you got fired because your passion was drifting to somewhere else. Maybe your passion isn't truly as a coach; it's as a general manager. And I think that when you wake up the day after, you're going to know a little bit more about your passion. And once that initial anger, that initial hurt goes away, um, you're going to know what you're passionate about. And for me, I woke up that next morning and I was like, what did I learn from this? And I know that that's what I've tried to teach my players. How can I get better from, the last 2 years has been different than the previous 6 years at RPI, which were different than the previous 3 years at Canisius. And this week is different than last week. So what can I learn from it all? Follow your passion, follow my passion, and then get on that bike and talk to people. Start riding again. And if your passion is in the right place, I believe in the system. I believe I will find my way. I believe others that this happens to will find their way if they're passionate about what they're doing.
awesome. Got to build your own momentum. Dave, listen, you're a good dude. Thanks so much for joining us. Our game's better with you in it, and I know that the coaches site and a lot of people here got your back, and look forward to that next chapter, man.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate the questions and the opportunity.